All right, let's dive into one of the biggest topics in health right now, time-restricted eating. You've probably heard it called intermittent fasting, but today we're going to get into the real science of it. We're talking about why when you eat might be just as important, if not more important than what you eat. So let me start by asking you a question. Just think about your day. If you had to guess, what's your eating window? From your first bite or drink in the morning to your last one at night. Most of us probably think, yeah, I'm pretty good, maybe 12 hours, say 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sounds about right, doesn't it?
Well, here's the thing. When scientists actually tracked thousands of people, the reality was pretty shocking. The average person isn't eating in a 12-hour window. It's more like 15 plus hours. Because, that splash of creamer in your coffee, that handful of nuts in the afternoon, the glass of wine after dinner, it all counts. It adds up way faster than we think.
And here's why that matters. All that grazing, spread out across the entire day, is constantly telling our bodies, hey, it's time to eat, time to process food. It never gives our system a break. And that constant on signal, well, it throws our internal body clocks, our circadian rhythms, completely out of whack. That's really where the trouble starts. But what if the solution is right there in the problem itself? This is where things get really interesting. Scientists started wondering, what if we just tightened that eating window? What would happen then? This led to a pretty revolutionary experiment. Okay, so let's go back to 2012, to this landmark study from Dr. Sachin Panda's lab. The setup was just brilliant in its simplicity. They took two groups of mice. They fed both groups the exact same terrible diet, high in fat, high in sugar. And both groups could eat as much as they wanted. The only, and I mean only, difference? One group had access to food 24/7. The other group could only eat within a strict 8-hour window each day. The results were just mind-blowing. As Dr. Andrew Huberman puts it, the mice that could eat whenever they wanted got really, really sick. They became obese, they developed fatty liver disease, the whole 9 yards. And remember, they eat the same number of calories as the healthy group. Let that sink in. The only thing that changed was the timing. And the 8-hour group, they were basically protected from all of it. They stayed lean, their livers were healthy, inflammation was low. It was incredible. And the reason why comes down to these things called clock genes. Think of them as tiny little clocks in every single cell of your body. When you give your body a long break from food, those clocks get the signal to switch from energy storage mode to cleanup and repair mode. Okay, so the science is fascinating for sure, but the big question is, how do we actually do this in our own lives? What are the rules? Well, thankfully, it's actually pretty simple. But before we get to the rules, you have to hear this story about where that 8-hour window even came from. You'd think it was decided by some complex formula, right? The truth is so much more human. The grad student running the mouse experiment, well, their partner basically told them they couldn't spend all night in the lab. So the 8-hour window wasn't some magic biological number. It was a practical limit, which tells you something really important. It's about consistency, not about some wholly unbreakable rule. So keeping that in mind, here's a really practical way to think about it. First, try to wait at least an hour after you wake up to eat. This just extends that amazing overnight fast. Then aim for an 8 to 10 hour eating window. That's kind of the sweet spot. The next rule is huge. Stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed. This is when your body does its deepest cellular cleaning, and you want to be fully fasted for that. And finally, be consistent. Try to keep that window the same every day. Yep, even on weekends. It keeps your body clock from getting a kind of metabolic jet lag. All right, this naturally brings us to the single biggest, most asked question people have when they start doing this. What can I actually have outside my eating window that won't mess everything up? So, what really breaks a fast? This is the question, isn't it? To get the answer, you gotta stop thinking about an empty stomach. That's not what this is about. We have to think about what's happening on a biological level. See, being fasted is a metabolic state. It's a condition where your blood sugar and insulin are super low. When that happens, it's the signal, it's the green light for your body to start cleaning house, repairing damaged cells, and burning stored fat for fuel. So anything that raises your blood sugar and insulin, well, that's what breaks the fast. It flips the switch back to storage mode. So the rule of thumb is actually really simple. Does it have calories or sugar that will make your insulin go up? If the answer is no, you're probably fine. We're talking water, black coffee, plain tea. But the second you add anything with calories, especially sugar or even protein, like that milk or creamer in your coffee, you're sending a signal to your body that the fast is over. It's time to stop repairing and start digesting.
And that just brings it all back to this one incredibly powerful idea. For so long, we've only talked about what to eat. But now we know, without a doubt, that when we eat is just as crucial. It's the other half of the health equation that most of us have been missing.
So now you know the science. By choosing when you eat, you are literally talking to the ancient clocks inside every single cell in your body. You have direct control over this incredibly powerful system. You get to be the conductor of your own biological orchestra. So the only question left is, how are you going to set your clock?